Did Limp Bizkit actually say the name of their band like themselves?
Limp Bizkit!
Yeah, you're right. All the time, actually. Now that you said it like them...
That was their whole song.
Lyrics. It was flared up all the like dormant memories of my mind that I blocked off from listening to that music.
It's basically that and aphorisms for sexual acts.
They're
and
like
buttholes.
They're like some bands that all of like America and the world is just like, we're just all going to forget that we like them.
Yep.
And that was one of them. That's like
I shamefully was really big into Limp Bizkit when I was younger.
Well,
because it was like safe rap, right? Like
the telltale sign for me that they were super washed up was that I heard they were playing at a gas station somewhere.
No way.
And I believed it.
Oh, okay.
Because I actually ended up looking it
up.
It
was like a rumor that you'd heard.
I thought about it for more than a second and went, nah.
But then you were like, but what if it was true?
Yeah.
Like, looked it up.
So I went like, that can't be true. And it took too long to get there. So yeah.
I love that your internal like metric is the gas station.
I think you were just too worried about missing the show. You're like, what gas station?
Which gas station?
Yeah. Was it a Golf? 76? Golf. Are those around anymore?
I don't know.
Okay. Well, whatever.
This is a really good podcast.
Hi, and welcome to Storied. This is the podcast where we take one piece of media and adapt it into another form of media. I.e., take a video game and adapt it into a film or adapt a TV show.
Do you know what we do here? It doesn't sound like you do.
What do we do, Sean?
Today we're going to talk about Papers, Please. The indie game came out in 2012, maybe 13.
Yeah, around that time.
And it's a pretty rad game. You should play it. It's on iPad now. And that's a great way to play.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
But we're going to turn it into a television series, a sort of episodic television series in the vein of like a Mad Men or The Americans or something along those lines.
Yeah, maybe Fargo.
Maybe Fargo.
All of those are television series as well done.
Yeah.
Series is what I said.
Yeah. So yeah,
maybe
welcome
Hill Street
aboard.
Blues.
Shut the fuck
up. Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. That's a show.
Yeah.
He's naming shows. Is that what we're doing?
That's why we give exampers.
Your
So
local
people don't think we're
news.
going to just do anything. We're not going to just turn it into Hill Street Blues, for instance.
Shit.
Have you ever watched that? Do you remember
I
this?
have. I've seen an episode.
Yeah.
Does that count? One episode?
Yep. I had to watch it in school.
Weird. Why did you have to watch it in school?
Because I had a genre TV class where we took once a week. We watched 4 episodes of a different genre and dissected what defined the genre.
That's
and that
cool.
was a cop drama episode. It was like that, The Shield, something else, and something else.
Oh man, The Shield.
The memorable other shows.
Yep.
Well,
All right.
well,
Well,
goodbye.
here we are. let's kick it off. Papers, Please.
Yeah, so, we should probably describe the game a little bit first before we get into it. It's basically a game where you... It touts itself as a dystopian document thriller, I think.
Which is such a good way.
Yeah.
It's such a bizarre, what is that? I just want to check it out because it seems so bizarre.
Yeah, and it's, you sort of play as this sort of Eastern Bloc, unnamed checkpoint guard.
Well,
during
your character's unnamed.
Yeah, your character is this sort of unnamed guy who sort of is a checkpoint guard in an old school sort of Soviet USSR era.
Aristotska.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
specifically Russia, even though it couldn't be more obviously Russia.
Yeah. It's very Russian in its sort of presentation, and but it could be Yugoslavia, it could be
Anywhere in that sort
any
of
of those Eastern Bloc
Baltic
countries,
regions.
Very Baltic
Georgia.
Eastern
You're a border guard, and you have to basically look at the papers and decide to let people through or not let them through. That's the whole game.
It sounds like, because you guys talked about, I played it more recently than you guys, and it sounds like such a bore. It sounds like such a job.
Yeah, it's hard to pitch.
Yeah,
it's a job. You literally are playing a job.
Yeah, you're literally just you're being a customs agent, like at the airport, essentially. But it's way more interesting than that.
Well, now that job just seems so exciting. Like, customs guy at the airport, like, hell yeah, I'd play that game. Yeah, it's weird. It's a weird thing to sort of be like, oh, this is the kind of game, this is my dream project to, make this game. But it ended up being really rad because there's other things to juggle besides just doing the job. You have a certain amount of hours in the day to process X amount of people, and the amount of people you process equals how many, currency you take home. And then once you get home, there's a phase in the evening where you have to pay for heat and food and sometimes medicine for your family. And so you are juggling these plates of, I want to filter as many people through the border as I possibly can, mixed with, like, if I screw up and get the paperwork wrong or, like, check the wrong box, then I get penalized and I get a bunch of, like, pink slips and I lose money. So you're, like, I want to go as fast as I can, so I'm trying to skim as much as I can, but then you make mistakes and miss discrepancies on the forms, and then you have less money, and that can, like, snowball. Like, if you don't have enough heat and things are too cold in your house, like, people will get sick and you start spending money.
And you have to spend money on medicine.
Right. Yeah. So there's a lot of sort of, like, timers you're juggling, which is really interesting, and then other sort of conspiratorial threads start popping up about, you know, are there terrorists trying to infiltrate the space, and sometimes people are trying to, like, hop the fence and they'll get shot by the guards, and it's like crazy stuff starts to happen over time. You sort of, like, get into that routine for the first period of the game where you're just literally clocking in and clocking out, and you almost get into like a zone where you're just kind of doing the job and nothing.
Yeah, and the game starts throwing you curveballs, right?
Right.
Like, it's like somebody will, you know, not have the right papers, and you know they don't have the right papers, and they basically, you're sort of looking at this nebulous blob that it represents a face, procedurally generated across the counter, and they're asking you to let them in because they're sick or they have a family on the other side, or, you know, there's all these things that kind of come up that you know, probably get put on a real patrol guard, and you have a lot of power in that you can let them through. You can stamp the document and you can let them through. But if you do that and you get caught, then you're both in trouble. So it's a lot of, like, really interesting sort of, you know, as you would, human stories coming through that gate. And that's kind of where we feel like, you know, we're going to expand the narrative a little bit beyond just going and sitting.
There's only 2 scenes. It's just like
in the booth.
2 sets.
All 7 seasons take place in that booth.
In the booth or in your apartment. So before we go too far, I kind of want to ask you both, how did you play? Because I was like hardline. Like, if you have the wrong paperwork, get the fuck out. Like, sorry your wife made it through and you didn't, buddy. Like, that's the way it is. And I was pretty much like cold and calculating and heartless when it came to people like, please, I know this paperwork's not quite right. Can you please let me in anyway? I'd be like, nope, like, get to the back of the line. I don't know how you guys played.
I mean, I played a lot of it in a couple of week period. You know, I kind of just mainlined it for a little while, and I played it in a couple different ways because you get days. You get the number of days you get in the game. It ends differently depending on how far you get and what you do, and so. Initially I was really sort of hardline, and I was more lenient when I started playing it on people who had stories, and I felt like I was trying to help them out, and I was suspicious of, like, there's like an old man who shows up,
the little short guy,
kind of like, I don't know what's going on with my papers, can you help me? And he hands you like a hot dog bun, and it's just like this really
and
weird,
like a 20.
yeah. And, you know, it's like immediately suspicious of this guy. So there were things like that. And then the next time through, because the cool thing about the game is the more you play it, the more you learn the rules. So you can actually get faster at processing papers. But they keep also throwing more things in. Like, the government changes things, like the requirements all the time. And there's like a rule book you have to follow. So once you start learning that, you know, I started getting really hardline. But then there were certain things I started getting interested in, like the 5th time through. Like there's like this, and this always happens. But, you know, you get this sort of, like, if you get far enough, somebody comes and slips you a thing and says, like, we're the underground, basically.
Yeah.
You should let this person through in a little while.
That guy, by the way, pretty clearly the underground.
Yeah. He's wearing like a hood and his, like, face is obscured.
It's like a druid hood, and his eye matches the logo.
Yeah.
Man, I didn't even notice that. That's good.
But I just wanted to make sure that was.
It's like all those, like, hacker underground things, like, that have their, like, logo on their shirt, or like in Watch Dogs 2. Like the dude, like the guy's, like, wearing the, like, a DedSec logo on his hat, and it's like, supposed to be an underground hacker group. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, that seems dumb. Don't get in the line like this. Did you get all the way through the line with this hood up? But yeah, I mean, I feel like anyway, you know, for me it was about, you know, getting interested in that and wanting to see where it went, and so you know, there's a lot of threads you can pull as a player. You can kind of, you know, decide what you get interested in, what you want to see happen. But you do also have to balance your family's welfare on the other side of it, which is difficult.
I played. I only got to play it twice. I'm newer to it, like I said, than you guys are. But once we decided, I played through twice. And the first time, I was definitely much more kind of lenient on people. You know, especially the people who are more obviously, who I thought were more obviously trustworthy or earnest, or like there's a some sort of like sex worker that comes through and she hands you the strip club card. They come visit me here. I'm coming to work in Arstotzka or whatever the hell the nation.
Can you imagine like Eastern Bloc strip club would be like? Fuck.
But then she's like, and please don't let this one guy in, because he's gonna come and he's gonna find me and he's gonna like make my life awful or like sell me into sex slavery, where she was like a stripper or whatever. So like when that guy came, he had the right papers, but I didn't let him through, and you get penalized and all kinds of stuff like that. Like I was definitely feeling more sympathetic towards people, which is weird because, as you said, they're kind of just like this amorphous, procedurally generated face that doesn't even emote really. Yeah,
very kind of voice
they don't even
going
speak. But and then
that's Aristotskian. Can you please not be so like close-minded?
But then you let some people in.
Sorry, Aristotskins.
What was so interesting and impressive about the game was to me was that it really like puts you in the shoes, like without like having it feel heavy-handed. Like you lose points, and you're trying to. The whole point of the game is to keep your family alive, and you don't make enough money to keep your family alive. If you don't make enough money, they die. So like, you let like one of these people I had sympathy for, like ended up being like a terrorist or something, and they blew up the thing, and I lost money because the thing shut early that day. Like, so it made me really start to be really careful about letting people in. And then like one of the guards comes up to you at some point, and he's like, if you keep detaining people, if you detain 2 people a day, I'll give you more money because I get more money the more people I interrogate. And it's like, it was really cool, like how they used like the point system to actually make you kind of reflect on what this kind of situation would be like, without it feeling boring and super like politically motivated, and really just keeping the.
You don't need any of that, right? It's like it's all human stuff.
It's in the game.
Yeah, it's all, but at the same time, it doesn't so much better than if they just told me,
right?
If they just did a heavy-handed. So as I went on, like I just got tired of getting fucked and stuff. I was intrigued by the secret organization, but I took their paperwork and gave it to my.
Well, the other interesting thing is you don't know if you're working for the good guys or not, really.
Yeah,
it's like there is this sort of oppressive nature to the aesthetic, and to you're obviously destitute. Your house is you got to pay a lot to keep the heating on. It feels like there's corruption going on, but at the same time, this organization could be a terrorist organization, and you don't really know. They give you like little newspaper clippings. And it could be that, but it could be that the government is telling you things that they need you to believe about them, or it could be that those headlines are real, and you just don't know as a player. So it's kind of an interesting like dissonance that helps the game in a way.
Yeah, I think that there is that sort of us versus them that forms in your head as you play that game, where it's like, listen. Like, I can't I can't be kind and help you out because my family needs this money. Like, I have to do my job properly, or I need to be corrupt and, like, detain people because, sorry, I'm making your life shitty, but my life is also shitty, and I have people that I am responsible for taking care of. So, as much as I might want to allow someone in or prevent someone from coming in to sort of save a person or sort of, like, follow a story thread, there is always that sort of pull back to, like, I have a family that I'm responsible for, and the game ends when they die. I mean, it ends a bunch of different ways, but one of the ways it can end is if they die. So you are, and I talk about this a lot, but like as far as like game design goes, like you and the main character are both motivated by the same thing, which is not letting your family die. Because if your family dies, the game ends, and no player wants the game to end, right? You want the game to keep going. So like you and the player, you like you said, Chris, like you really feel like you're in that guy's shoes because he obviously the character doesn't want his family to die, and you have to make decisions based on that like fulcrum, where like I want to help people and be a nice person and not be corrupt and shitty and sort of like further the corruption of the government. But I also have a much more personal thing to deal with, which is just my family.
Yeah, and what's really cool about it, too, is like, it doesn't, in a lot of these decisions, like, to detain people and stuff, it's not just you abusing power. You don't have a detain button, like, right off the bat. It's like, they'll have, like, incorrect paperwork or something. Like, they have, so, like, the opportunities present themselves, and you're at least kind of justified. Do you know what I mean? It's not just so black and white ever that you're just detaining this person to be a piece of shit. Like they did something wrong, and clearly, like whether it was like, you know, like just an actual mistake, like somebody, like whoever printed their passport had a wrong thing printed, or it's actually fake and they're terrorists and they're coming in. You don't know. You know what I mean? Like you can't tell in any situation what is the actual case, and a lot of times they'll give you excuses like, I don't know why that happened. You know, I thought this was legit. Can I please come through? You know, and like it's really good at designing the choices around that kind of principle. It's never just, are you going to be a piece of shit to get the money? You know, this person could be a terrorist. You could get more money for detaining them. You could let them go. They seem fine. You know, I just thought that's really interesting about it too. It's never so. It's not easy. No choice was easy.
Yeah, and I also, what's cool about it is that you can't tell what people's motivations are. Not only because the game is so sort of short and simple, and the characters are just text. They're just giving you text boxes. When someone's like, I think, you know, I am this person and I have these goals, you just sort of have to look at that and take it at face value and be like, I don't believe you based on, you know, XYZ, or I have to believe you, and then they turn around and fucking, you know, the trench coat comes off and a bunch of bombs, like, they kill themselves and a bunch of people, and then the next person who comes through is like, I'm a good guy, though. And you're like, well, fuck, I let another guy through who I thought was good, so now I'm going to have to judge all my mistakes based on that stuff, which, again, I'm sure is really what happens to people in those situations where you might bend a rule for someone because you have a soft heart, and then that comes back to haunt you when that person actually was just screwing with you and taking advantage of you emotionally, and then it sort of like trickles down the line to everyone else in that line who now, you know, every time you meet someone and they give you a sob story, you have to think about it through that lens.
Yeah. It does a great job too, putting you in situations where, I remember they introduced like a scanner, like a body scanner.
Yeah.
And just, having to put an old lady through a nude body scanner.
Yeah.
It's just
completely embarrassed them.
Not nice, yeah. And they ask you not to do it, but you have to, because you've learned already that you can't trust anyone. Maybe, but it's just really great, because all it is clicking a button or just clicking a stamp. You know what I mean? And that's the great thing about it. It's like that button's blinking. It's right there. It's like detain or whatever, and you can click it, but you could also just say like approved.
Yeah, at any point in that process, while you're looking at paperwork, you can just approve them. Like, you don't have to go through any like system of check marks to check off all their paperwork. You can just ignore all their paperwork and hit approve
or decline. And you basically
decline.
And you're deciding whether or not you want to believe in this old lady. Is she telling the truth, or are we going to find a gun on her?
Is it Tom Cruise in a mask?
Yeah. Yeah, super.
That happened to me in my playthrough.
Oh man, Tom Cruise showed up.
Mm-hmm.
The whole game is actually just a marketing stunt for the next Mission Impossible movie.
Yeah.
It just fades to the logo of the next Mission Impossible movie.
Oh man, the Belco VR thing. Yeah, classic.
So it seems like it has all the trappings for a really good television show.
Well,
like
you have the family on the other side. You have the job, which is important and becomes increasingly important. And then you have, a lot of. I think we'd add external threads to it. Like that'd be one thread. Like if you were going to do, a guy whose job it was to kind of be a document process person at a checkpoint. That's not an entire story around that, but it feels like maybe there's like a main, that's the A line, the A story, and then there's like a B story on the levels of government somewhere, or in the terrorist organization, quote unquote, or something along those lines. I feel like there's a lot you could do with that world, sort of a fictionalized Soviet Union.
Yeah, I think it'd be hard to just, you'd have to expand beyond that booth, like, pretty quickly, just because by the sheer nature of what that job is, like, you couldn't have a lot of repeat people come through there, which would mean you have all these like endless story threads that are still happening, and they do it well in the game. But most of the people only come back if you don't let them through, Yeah.
And those don't feel like stories that would be told. It feels like those would happen, but you would also have like the guy getting approached outside of the booth by the terrorist organization or by people who know what he does for a living and ask for his, the help of his sister, or have somebody within his own family need it, or there's a lot of threads you could pull just sort of inherent in the job, rather than have it be purely about doing the job.
This is a bad pitch probably, but I feel like
Great start.
I feel like I want to explore it at least as a possibility. It's just something to think about. That might lead to more interesting thought, but
I hate it already.
Yeah, God, you've already oversold it.
well, like we don't get this kind of TV show too often anymore because we have so much serialized narratives. We have so many serialized narratives like Breaking Bad or Mad Men or what's on now actually, and not 5-year-old shows. But there used to be shows like Murder, She Wrote and like The Love Boat and like where you'd have like your staple cast, you know what I mean? But then you'd have like the story of the week would be on a different kind of person, you know what I mean? Where I feel like there is a version of the show that could exist that way, where you know you'd have your gatekeeper sort of border clerk. And then he would be kind of like a framing character, kind of like a Sandman-ish, kind of like he exists in, or he is like a Columbo or Angela Lansbury, and he kind of like watches.
Jessica Fletcher, please.
We'll call him Angela Lansbury in the show. But like where they do exist in the story, but they're not the main driving force. They're just kind of witnessing, you know, sort of
the Crypt Keeper.
Yeah, detective. Well, they're more involved than the Crypt Keeper.
Yeah,
than a little 3-foot Muppet.
Yeah,
but something like that is possible, I think, with this because of the sheer nature of the guy just being stuck in the booth. Like what every week he'd have a different story come through, and we follow that story, and it would connect back up somehow or not. You know, like whether it be tonally or it wouldn't be serialized.
I can see a version of that working. So, like the Jessica Fletcher version feels too convenient because it's really Quantum Leap is what we're looking at here, right?
Right. Yeah, that's actually a better
Quantum Leap
show.
Is like, hey, like this week we're solving this person's problem, and here's how we're doing it. But I feel like that doesn't. It feels dated. I think you could get away with doing something though, where every week you would have a thread, or not every week even, but you would have a side story about one of those people, and then you'd see them interacting in some way at the checkpoint, or maybe not. Maybe you would build it over the season. You know, I mean, you're pitching it serialized. I'm not saying it's a bad idea, but I feel like the structure of it means that now it feels almost like they're getting judged by him, if that way. Whereas the other way, the spirit of the game is that you have to be the judge,
right?
And I think we would lose that idea. You know, seeing it from both sides every time,
or especially since it wouldn't revolve around the same character, and you wouldn't get an idea of his values over time and that kind of thing changing. If it was a different, border guard every time, or a different, very different scenario where he's not the main character. You know what I mean? I don't know if you would get the sort of like A-level thread that carries through a season where you like the thing about those old television shows like Quantum Leap or Love Boat or whatever is like you didn't really ever have to watch them in order. You could just kind of like pick one out, and it was its own self-contained thing, beginning, middle, and end, and that was it. It never really advanced any sort of like larger.
Well, and the structure of stuff. The structure of it supported that. Quantum Leap is like he's just leaping around trying to get home, and he at random leaps in. I don't know. I mean, were you imagining there'd be like a how would you fold that in?
Well, I think actually a better version would be like X-Files. Mm-hmm. It would be a better sort of thing to map to, because X-Files had the ongoing mythology episodes, but then they had so many Monster of the Week episodes where the larger narrative would get forwarded. It just wouldn't be in every episode. Do you know what I mean? And then you kind of had Mulder and Scully, who more than most procedurals had pretty well-defined characters that but they did have that kind of like witnessing detective trying to just put the pieces together goal in most episodes. They weren't that usually. I mean, Mulder had they had the same like kind of like backstory things that were affecting, like Mulder wanted things to be true, and Scully was always trying to find the scientific answer. But they kind of were pretty static in a lot of episodes, but over the course of
never accomplished anything.
Yeah.
That whole show is them just not. They barely witness something. One of them sees something, the other one didn't see.
I love that.
Yeah, they never get any proof.
What I love is that
they never fix anything.
Right. The best part about that show, I've gone back, I've been watching it all the way through. Like I'm like season 6 now. The best part about it is just the hoops the writer has to jump through to separate Mulder and Scully, and have Scully like fall and like get knocked unconscious, or like lose something and be looking on the ground, or like be turned away when some crazy like alien thing happens, or a monster shows up, or some very obviously, yep, this is really happening, and only Mulder is seeing it.
Yep, she's
and
in the bathroom.
and she turns around and goes, "What did I miss?" And it's just gone. And it was just here. The aliens were just here. Okay, all right, take it easy, you know. But they had to keep doing that for so many seasons. They had to keep coming up with more outlandish reasons why she just continues to just like be not looking in the right direction.
Yeah, I feel like that's why they were like separated doing things a lot.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like Mulder would go, I'm going to go talk to this person, and then Scully would be like, well, I'm going to do an autopsy.
Yep.
And then it was just like, you know, if they're not together, then we don't have to worry about it.
Exactly.
I feel like they kind of got smart about that for a while, because, for a while there it was just like, somebody turned the corner faster than the other person.
Yep.
The
only thing about that, and I do like your pitch a lot, actually, I think that the thing about X-Files is they can sort of keep the formula fresh because they can go to lots of different locations. Like they go to Canada, they go to Russia, they go to Antarctica. But I don't know, and we haven't really gotten to that. So maybe we could do that in the show, and it's a very different formula from the game. But at first glance, on a shallow pass, it definitely feels like you are in a city and you have some like key location, or like even like House, like the show, where it's a hospital. It's the same cast of characters. People come in with different weird problems that have to be solved, and by the end of the day, either they live or they die, and then you just sort of like wrap it up, and that's a wrap, and you come back next week and do the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's what I meant by the structure. I'm not supporting it, because it's like, Columbo goes places. Whatever the fuck his name is from Quantum Leap, Scott Bakula goes places.
It is Scott
his character's name. Yeah. Mulder Scully, they go places, but this feels like it's very much locked down inside this oppressive society. Mm-hmm. And I feel like there's a lot to be mined from going, like, not just going to the booth. I mean, I wouldn't imagine a lot of the episodes are like sitting in the,
Oh, funny! I thought every single episode would just be 30 minutes of him just standing there.
Yeah,
just watching him match.
A lot of close-ups of looking at papers and looking at like the male-female check boxes on both papers. Yeah.
But I mean, a lot of it's discussing with his wife what's going on, what he had to do, and like seeing him have to do something every now and again. It's like really, like sort of heart-wrenching, and how that affects his life and the life of other people, and like whether he mentioned this to anybody, or seeing somebody he knows go through this and trying to help them out in some way and not being able to, or getting detained himself, or like a movie like The Lives of Others. I don't know if you've seen that, but like it's very much about just living in that society and what that does to everyone. And that movie is very much, I don't want to spoil it for you guys because you haven't seen it, but it's about somebody whose job it is to do something like this, learning to not think the same way. And I think that there's so much to be said for making just a tense or bleak drama based in obviously like paying people is hard to come by, or paying people for heat is something you have to do. Like, is that because of corruption? Do you have to like slip a guy extra money? Do they stop doing that at any point in the show? Do they fight against it? Do they try to move? Somebody is getting sick. Like, there's just sort of natural drama built into the art of the game as it is. And then I think in addition to that, like having something like a thread where you see the other side of one of these people who does get desperate enough to like leap over the fence and try to get through the checkpoint by themselves, or who gets to the checkpoint, and you've seen their story up to this point, and you're wondering, the tension comes from whether or not our main character, based on who they are at the time, is going to let that person through, because you've seen they have a noble goal.
And if there's going to be any repercussions for the main character coming from the government, even if the person that they let through is just and good, and the choice was just and good, like right. The government has no feeling for that sort of thing. So exactly. Seeing the government turn around and be like, you shouldn't have done that, and like the repercussions of a system pushing down on a person who is a good person and trying to do the right thing, and then sort of like breaking down his ability to do that over time is bleak and interesting.
Yeah. So I mean, I do think you could fold in like a kind of movie of the week, a monster of the week version of problems, but I don't think it would be every week. And I feel like you might have threads that would kind of build and culminate through the season and kind of be elliptical, in which like you have one that kind of closes out at some point, and then another one's introduced earlier than that, and then that one kind of closes out late at some point, or maybe some of them are longer things that go over seasons.
People show up when you don't expect them to come back.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah,
I think that's true. And
somebody comes for revenge once, you know.
Yeah, and I haven't seen Mad Men, but I feel like that's a good.
You can't say that in the podcast. You can't just say that out loud. We're supposed to just like get away with never watching Mad Men. Now everyone knows.
I've seen some of it. I haven't finished it.
Okay.
So I haven't watched all the seasons yet. But what I have seen, it is very, you're in the ad agency for most of it. It's so very personal. But I think what you were talking about, like, maybe a quarter of each episode will take place at the most at the booth, and a lot of it will take place with his family.
Well, it's not even just the booth; it's like where they go, where do they work,
right? His coworkers and like that company. Right?
That's what I mean. Yeah. But like, you'll see. The more interesting thing to watch probably is how the decisions he makes there and the scrutiny under which he is monitored. Like, then affect the rest of his life.
Right.
And I'm using him. It can be a she. I don't care. I don't know at this point. But I think that is interesting grounds for it. I think if that's the case, though, like, then you got to think about the slow arc, I think, that you want to have. And I think, like, this might be the obvious route, but then you'd have to have something where, like, you start the show and he's either already kind of has this cleric job that he kind of thinks that he's got to hang on, and then, like, for some reason somebody comes one day that just he wants to give leniency towards or something, and they slip through, and it seems small, but then we end up finding out later that it was bigger, and it's also because of, like, him doing that and going against this kind of code or what he promised to his country. Like, he's worried about being watched, and there's, like, a big brother feeling. You know what I mean? Like, which is one of the best things about that book I love, is, like, for so long...
The book?
I only read the book, Big Brother, or 1984.
Oh, okay, there it is. I didn't see the title of the book.
Yeah, 1984.
Big Brother.
Oh, Big Brother, yeah.
Children's book about,
about
what it's like to have a big brother. You give it to, like...
He's always watching
Be a big brother. You give it to some kid who's about to have a little son, I was going to say.
Wow.
I mean, brother or sister. Anyway.
What's so good about that book to me is that they draw out whether or not they're watching him for so long.
Yeah, you don't know if they know.
It's more his paranoia that weighs on him than not having any sign whatsoever that they're actually watching him. Yeah. Which would be cool for this too. And then just having that paranoia would affect other parts of his life and the decisions he makes. And I think that, like, you'd have to have that kind of event in the pilot, I think, to do.
I think you would, something like. I think the idea of him letting somebody through he shouldn't have is good, and I also feel like, maybe upping the stakes in terms of, like, what the job is in the first episode would be good. Like we're at war now with another country, so you have to be extra careful. Is something he's told. You know what I mean? Like, he has been doing it for a while, but it's been a pretty easy job, and now unrest is happening, and it just gives everything an air of sort of mystery and uncertainty, and it gives them more to worry about as a family. Like, what does this mean for our nation? What does this mean for us? Am I helping or hurting? Is our government doing the right thing or not? It gives them a lot to kind of, drama about.
Yeah, I think that the idea, and this might be a little too on the nose or too obvious, but the idea just that, like, he starts out fully, well, at least partially, like, with having faith in his government and saying, like, look, this is not great, but it's for the protection of the government and the country, and and over time just having that government, like, you do everything right, and then suddenly the government just is. You make one wrong decision or you do something wrong, no matter how many accolades you've built up over time, it's just like in the gulag with you. And just having your government sort of betray you in that way, and have him realize that, the government is pressing down on him as much as he's pressing down on everyone else. I mean, that's definitely an easy get for a country like that. But I think there's something interesting in this person who does this job and is a part of the system, and then somehow the system still grinds him up. Not just with, like, the shittiness of the job, but the fact that the government being so, like, not corrupt or not, but just being so hardline about everything. If as soon as you screw up or step out of line, even for the right decision or the right purposes, like noble purposes, you just are immediately kicked out. There's no room for discussion. There's no room for like understanding. It's just get the fuck out. So his many years of like valuable service are just like wiped clean. His life is kind of ruined over that. And I think that's definitely something really interesting about that.
Yeah, and visiting the humanity in that system too. I mean, I feel like not everybody is going to agree with what they're doing, and but you do it anyway for your own reasons, or you don't.
It's just a government
there's
filled
penalty. There's not penalty.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like there's a lot to be said for having there be guards you encounter who are on the checkpoint. There's a corrupt guard, who's trying to get him to do something, and there seems to be danger in not doing it. But like he could tell somebody about that and get him in trouble, and does that get him in further trouble? Or going back to the resistance people, like if he ends up getting involved in that in some way, or somebody in the family does, and he finds out about it and worries about it, there's a lot to be kind of mined for that, or like painting those the resistance members as terrorists at the start of the show, and then it turning out to be that being the thing he finds out is actually bullshit. Via his job in some way, he sees something that happens to one of these people that didn't deserve it. They were just trying to get food to some people on the other side of the border, or whatever it ends up being. I mean, there's just a lot of sort of inherent that Big Brother aspect does bring a lot of sort of inherent tension to the project as a whole, and I think you can mine that for all it's worth. I mean,
I think taking it in that direction, but then one thing that could be really cool to maintain from the story and the thing that we were talking about, or the game. And the things we were talking about that we liked about it would be like he sees it and like it's not clear what's happening. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? Like either he sees the resistance people doing something more human, as you were talking about, or he sees something that kind of makes it feel like they might be made up. Do you know what I mean? Like
being tested.
Yeah, like they might be government created, like in 1984, how they had like all this like war propaganda for wars that he wasn't even sure if they were actually happening. Right. Like this might be somebody like an actor of sorts who's acting like there's this resistance just to kind of keep fear and to keep the power.
It's like a mystery shopper.
Yeah.
Retail job. Yeah.
But I mean, but not playing it in like a cheap way. Like having it be having all those beats be very, very
good.
Ambiguous. Well, ambiguous. Like it's not. He sees just it's like minor stuff.
Yeah.
That just doesn't settle him, and he can't tell. You know, it's like not. It's not so spelled out.
Like there's a whole season's worth of whether you trust someone who's doing this or not, and you keeps encountering them. It's like every 2 episodes or so, or if you do a 10-episode season, you have 4 or 5 episodes that person is in, and it ends up being do or die time. But maybe it's a trap, and there's a reason for us to believe it's a trap. There's a reason for him to believe it's a trap. And eventually the leap of faith is the end of the season or whatever, and then we find out in the 3rd season which of the things are more interesting. But I feel like there's a lot to do with that sort of who do I trust, and like seeing one of the things that would be interesting about it to me is like that culture of paranoia feels like it would breed a lot of kind of unrest even between families and between friends. You hear about that kind of stuff all the time from like Civil War days and Nazi Germany and just places where people turn on each other because they were fearful for their own lives, and just seeing that sort of thing happen or having to do that kind of thing.
I mean, like children that would report their parents to the SS, because they weren't being loyal enough.
Right. Yeah. Like there's a genuine worry from your own children.
Yeah.
That something's going to go wrong. That's super crazy and intense, and like it's really it's dramatic without being overblown. I think
and it's very real.
Yeah,
I think that. So I watched this movie. I think a couple Christmases ago, just at home, and we were just checking out what's on like Apple TV with my mom, and I was just watched this Ewan McGregor movie called Our Kind of Traitor, which was about this dude who's on vacation in some country and just through happenstance gets invited to like this like Russian mobster's like daughter's wedding or whatever, and he basically says like, listen, I can't trust anybody, they're gonna try and kill me, I have a bunch of like proof on this like USB stick about their money laundering, this like global money laundering thing. But if I give it to any of my other people, they're moving against me. They'll get killed. So he gets brought into this thing where he just kind of threw his hands up and goes, "I don't want to do that." And the mobster's like, "You have to fucking do it. I'm a mobster. I'll kill you if you don't do it." So he kind of got thrust into this world that he had no interest in being a part of. So he takes the USB stick, crosses the border back into America or England. I think probably England. And he gives it to the authorities, and then it's like, okay, you can't just give us this. You are now involved. You have to go to the interview room and tell us where you got it and tell us about the guy and like explain to me what's on the stick. And then, the Russian mobster comes in and, says, "I'm only going to deal with you and McGregor's character, because he's the only one I trust." And he just continues to get kind of, not blackmailed, but like caught up in a thing that he had no interest in being a part of at all in the beginning. So the idea that someone could come to your booth in the show, whether he's a guard or some maybe the guard's like, "Hey, like I'm going to duck out for 20 minutes, just watch. Here's $20, just watch. Just tell everyone I'm still here. I'm just going to go get laid or whatever." And he comes back, like while he's gone, some shit goes down, and now you are kind of on the line for this lie that you covered for this one person that sort of blows up into this much larger thing that you didn't want to get involved in, but now you are super culpable in because of a decision that you made early on. I think it's really interesting, the idea that you're not making a decision to like betray the country or whatever. It starts off with some small little thing, someone asked you to do a favor, and now you're just involved in a way that you just cannot extricate yourself from it.
Yeah, and that's kind of stuff that could blow up pretty easily. I think there's a difficult decision to make about turning that guy in.
You just do it, and just the story ends there.
Well, all the pressure's on, but all the pressure's on him to do it, and like it feels like there's the whole episode about this. It starts with that, and then ends with them turning him in, or not doing it, and what the repercussions of that are. I feel like that's the kind of thing that drama, great drama, is made of, is being able to sort of put somebody up against a very difficult. Like, if this is like a likable guard, it's very easy to see why he wouldn't want to do it.
Just Paul Blart.
If it's a likable Paul Blart-esque mall cop
guard, Blart
Kevin
qualities.
James doing a Russian accent.
Oh, perfect.
But yeah, I mean, that kind of thing feels like that there's a kind of difficult decision you would have to make to put yourself or your ideals up first. It feels like a lot of the show would sort of be about what you value more. Like some people will die for their ideals rather than betray a friend, and some people will not.
Yeah, it's interesting because on a similar path to that, like I thought of two examples that might work as sort of maps for our character.
Naked old ladies.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Good
map.
Thanks.
Have you seen The Wire, Harrison?
Oh, yes, I've seen The Wire.
Okay, cool. I didn't want to spoil it.
I was going to mention that earlier.
Spoilers, everyone.
Yeah, I've definitely watched it and wanted to bring it up earlier in the podcast, and I'm like, that's stupid, I shouldn't bring that up.
No, I think it's a really good show that, like, it really does a lot with the people and doesn't just rely on quote-unquote action. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just
some lazy stereotypes that I can really remember.
Yeah, well, one of my favorite characters ever on TV is in season 2. It's the character Frank Sabatka. I don't know if you remember him, but he was at the beginning of the season. Like, I think everybody hated him.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, he's just like this crooked, like, dock worker who's just involved with the mafia. And I don't remember the specifics, but like as the season goes on, like he has this. He's compromised a lot in his life, but then like the organized crime starts to like tighten the noose and get closer, and then like he starts to compromise things he just won't be compromised. And by the end of the season, he dies, but he's fighting to hold on to the things that keep him allowing to live the way he lives. If that makes sense, like he's compromised enough, and it's not like a falling down, like this is my last straw kind of way. He's just like, it just is such a slow kind of burn. And by the end of the season, like when he dies, like I was just so heartbreaking. And I remember in like less than 10 episodes, like I was like, I fucking hated this guy 10 episodes ago. And now
it's that idea that people have more going on than you can see. And I think that this especially when you have to keep what's going on with you hidden, makes it so that exposing that is much more crushing or much more impactful to the people who finally see the crack in the veneer. It's this is a society of people who basically act a certain way because it's expected of them all the time, and then anything beyond that, anything different, anything below that surface feels interesting.
But it also feels dangerous, right?
Yeah.
So like in The Wire, what's really great is he can still have that character can still have like heartfelt conversations with people around him that he trusts about like, listen, I don't want you, my son, or whatever, to get involved in his life. And he has his like fuck up son Ziggy, who just keeps wanting to be a badass and just keeps fucking it up and like making Frank's life more difficult because he's trying to sort of go straight and not compromise on certain things. And I think that you can get a similar but different feeling from the Papers, Please show, which is I want to tell my coworkers about this thing I did or my family about this thing I did, but like I can't even express fear or doubt or uncertainty about my government, or I let this guy, I like a specific thing that is against the rules but shouldn't be, and I believe strongly, I have certain beliefs that anything that is, as you said, John, different or goes against the sort of like the grain of the party is like you could just get shot in the back of the head for that, be thrown in a ditch. So the idea that you would, like, the main character would want to express himself to someone that he really trusts, and then having that like blow up, and this person was like, "Sorry, man, like I had to turn you in because otherwise I'd get like I didn't want to do it. We are friends, but someone found out about it, and I had to turn you in, or I had to say something because it's my ass on the line, and I have a family to take care of, so I can't, and then feeling that sort of betrayal and that sort of loss is a really interesting, a whole episode could be said about that stuff.
Yeah, for sure. I was thinking about District 9 too. It's a similar. I mean, maybe this is just a similar
aliens
model.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, like it.
South Africa.
Well, the idea being that like we talked a little bit about this guy being our main character being potentially somebody you like, and then makes a compromising decision at the front of the season. But there's also the other side of the coin, which could be interesting. Is like, especially in a dystopia such as this, like, what if there's the guy who is the pawn, and when you meet him at the beginning of the story, you don't really like him. You know what I mean? Like that's what happened with what's his name, Vicus.
Oh yeah.
In District 9, like he's a piece of shit. He's like beating up the aliens and like just totally like destroying.
He's getting off on the power that the government suit gives him.
And then all of a sudden circumstances change and he becomes in there. He starts to mirror their circumstance and becomes a victim of the very power that he was once involved with. I think it's just another path to get the character down. And I don't know what's the better one. They both seem appealing, but I just wanted to offer that because we were kind of talking about what if we like our guy.
I think there's both ways is the way to go, even if it's not the main character. Like the idea that there is someone who is fully all about, someone above him, maybe his boss or something, and he starts out just fucking shitty and loves stomping on people, and like he gets off on that power, and then something happens where you see the veneer crack and you see like he is a sad, scared man underneath all of it, and he's crying and like, please don't tell, like you catch him in the middle of something fucking wrong, he's like, please don't tell anyone, please don't tell anyone, like, and you see that not the victim, but like he is a victim of the company, the country as well. And maybe you over time do start to like that character, and the main character and this person start to bond in a way that maybe they have a shared secret,
That's exactly the kind of thing that happens in The Lives of Others.
It's going to have to watch it.
Yeah. It's I think it's a German movie.
It definitely
like 2007.
Yeah.
But it, it's really kind of slow, and there's a lot of, it's very, very, very subtle. But basically, the idea is that this guy eavesdrops on this other guy. He's been told, take this guy down, I don't care what you have to do. And by doing that, he kind of changes his mind about things, just by kind of listening in on these other people's lives and kind of getting another perspective on it. So I feel like there's a lot of that. And again, going back to that facade cracking, it's like this show, I feel like you could use to tell a lot of stories about the people in this person's life. A lot of threads that are going on about, you could have a Frank Zabaka kind of character. You could have somebody who kind of, like Vicus kind of character, like, as people that these people know, I feel like it'd be very interesting to kind of, there are terminus points for those people and their stories, but one of those people is going to get arrested, one of them is going to get killed, one of them is going to join the government and say, we're not friends anymore. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of decisions that get made, like hard point decisions that sort of drive. But I think you could see like all of that stuff through the lens of the main character. Pretty easily. I feel like you could fold in this sort of ensemble stuff by just kind of like, this is what it's doing to all these other people, and that stuff affects our family in this way. Could it be within the family? There's a lot of ways you could go with it, but.
So you keep the main character and family pretty clean. It sounds like
no, but I think you could have them. Like we were talking earlier, the kids are starting to get in some shit, some junior Nazi shit, or you have like, there's such a horrible thing that can happen with paranoia. I think where I can imagine there being a situation where you get home from work and you tell your wife things you shouldn't have told her, and then she says to somebody else, and now she's in trouble. Or you could play that character in a way where, she does keep all the secrets and she knows them all, and then she gets arrested for another reason, and he's sort of starts to wonder, because it's been so long, if she's going to crack and give away anything he said. I feel like there's a lot of there's a lot of ways you could play it they're all dramatic and they're all interesting.
The paranoia ratcheting up over a season or over the length of the show, in that way that Breaking Bad does it, where he has to scramble to solve problems that either exist or don't exist, but he sort of goes, just goes off the deep end in certain times and just becomes I don't know if we'd want our character to become evil the way that Walter White becomes evil, but that idea of paranoia making you do irrational things and fear things that aren't real, and just changing you as a person is really, really interesting. I think that a slow burn, and that leads to a thing I was going to mention earlier, or a question I was going to pose was, do you feel like this would be a 30-minute show or an hour show? Per episode. Yeah, I was going to say an hour, because I feel like the burn needs to be slow. The pacing on this show seems like it would be pretty slow and explosive for a few moments of action, and then sort of back down to that sort of like slow paranoia grind.
Yeah, it's more of a character drama, I think, and all of the tension and all the drama comes out of what people want and what the government wants of people. Just pushing and pulling,
and it's. I think it'd be a challenge when you're talking about Breaking Bad, and I was thinking about that similarly, because there was a lot of really good paranoia in there, just in terms of hiding from the DA and hiding from Gus and all that. But I think one thing that's hard with this, but could also make it really good, is the minute there's a confrontation directly from the government towards our main character, is the minute the show's over. Do you know what I mean? Because it's the whole thing is going to be predicated, I think, on the paranoia and then not knowing.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be hard. There's going to be a challenge to that. But, you don't want to have... The minute that they sit him down in an interrogation room is the minute the show's not worth...
Well, there's I feel like there's if you do the arc of the show correctly, in my opinion, there's a season 2 episode where that happens, but it ends up to be false alarm.
Yeah.
And then in season 4, it's real.
That's what I mean.
He thinks that he's really caught out, and they're just checking, and then they clear him.
Yeah. But you can see how scary it is. You can see that, and then, but yeah, just that kind of thing where it's it culminates with that, and much like 1984, I feel like 1984 ultimately, is about the system breaking a man. That free will. It's very dark. It's not going to hold up.
He breaks himself more than
sure. But I just mean that it just the idea that person is not suited to live that life. He's weak enough. Weak is in quotation marks,
soft-hearted enough,
but he values things that get him killed. Basically, he does die, right? I can't remember. I haven't read it in a long time.
I don't think he does.
I think he gets mind melted. Or
yeah, he just gets at the end. He's saying, "All hail, Big Brother."
Yeah, that's right.
He's not.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, he just gets brainwashed.
Yeah,
I think literally. I think he might even get lobotomized or something.
That is Brazil.
Yeah, it basically ends with him. Spoilers for 1984. Just saying the things that the government's been trying to get him to say all this time.
Yeah,
they break him in that
There's a breaking
101.
point. Yeah.
Right. Even though he doesn't want to, then his life becomes such that it's easier for him to say that than to keep fighting against it, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
He just succumbs.
So my question would be then, would we have an episode where at some point he and his family pack up and try and leave, and they go to another country, and he experiences their border guards. He goes to America, and the border guards in America are like, "Let me see your papers," and then the episode ends there.
Yeah. No, I mean, there is something to the idea that, you know, there's a lot of ways you could end it. I feel like could end in a very sour note with that sort of 1984-esque kind of they're broken by the system. Or you could end in a more hopeful way. Like, I would say you would even just have them pack it. Like, you would end the series with him like packing to go, and then not know if they ever made it. You know,
I think there's a lot of steps in between here.
Yeah,
but I think like what would be really interesting, and the thing I found most powerful about playing the game was how. Not quickly, but how I was eventually able to become much stricter. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? So, like, at the end of the series, like, he's lost potentially his whole family, and all he's got left is and he becomes one of the most hardest, like, you know, he's older at this point. He becomes much more conservative. He's like one of the more hard-fisted guys in the entire regime because he's, you know, and he doesn't know all of his information. The honesty or the veracity of all the information he gets, but there's a couple times, like, maybe one of the terrorists takes out his son when he thinks his son is, like, going to fold or something. You know what I mean? Like, so, like, he's just lost so much that it's just easier to come to the system. And it's not in a brainwash way. It's out of complete necessity and having lost every other avenue.
I got it. He thinks his daughter is dead. And then she comes through the passport station. And he finally lets her through.
Nice, yeah. When he realizes that, like, the paperwork and her, like, the passport don't match.
Yeah.
And he just says approved anyway.
And then it looks like she's going to get caught. And then he, like, runs out. He's like, no!
No.
They all kill him.
And then they shoot him in a slow machine gun.
No.
Exactly.
To be true to the game, what happens is the paperwork is wrong, and he stamps approved, and she walks off, and then a little pink slip gets printed, and you get a little citation, and it ends on that.
Yeah. It's the last amount of money he had left.
Yeah, it's 25 rubles or whatever.
Yeah.
But I mean, to me, that kind of ending, not the one you were talking about, though. Like,
that's great. Yeah, what are you talking about?
But to me, like, this kind of story too, I think that so many people. One thing I love about Breaking Bad is that it just took somebody and turned them into. They made like such a human bad decision, like you could justify it, and then it just went further and further down that spiral. And I mean, it's completely personal bias, but I love stories that take people in places they don't want to. They take characters in places that the people watching it don't admit they would want to go.
Right.
But it's a really clear trajectory how they got there.
Or people don't admit that they would probably make the same mistakes or decisions given the same situations.
Right.
Is Walter White that much weaker and worse a man than any of us?
Well, I think that the Walter White analogy is that character was sort of he was already predisposed to it, so going down that pathway meant that that guy specifically made those decisions, and that was fascinating to watch because that specific guy was kind of, again, predisposed to it. Like, you can kind of see that in his personality from the very beginning of the show, that he's kind of very controlling and it's there, but it's like teased out by all this power that he gets.
But it's so many people share some of his personal traits, if not all. You know, I just maybe I'm completely.
We all have a dark shadow of ourselves that can be pulled out given the right circumstances.
It sounds cynical and pessimistic, but there's a reason the whole country of people got behind Nazi Germany. You know what I mean? It's like it's just
fear.
Yeah, well, fear, and then also just like
and racism.
but it's not that simple.
Being
though.
destitute.
You know what I
mean? No, I know.
It's like
listen. Let's talk about history real quick. We have so many minutes left in the show.
Yeah, there's a lot of factors.
It's the same reason. You know, there's similar sentiments going on in our country, and that's all I'll say. So it doesn't get political, but you know, it's people bend in directions you don't think they're going to. Consider it with certain circumstances. Considering fear. Considering. You know, what they have to lose. You know, you're like, I just think that's more interesting ground to tread than you know, either the happy ending or the completely cynical ending of where this TV show would go.
Well, I mean, I would imagine a lot of it would be gray. Like, I can't see, I think the drama comes out of what the specific characters do again, rather than what is right to do. Like,
Yeah.
We would never judge the characters. The characters would never be judged on the show. It would just be...
They would never be judged by the show.
Yeah.
They can be judged by other
People
characters.
would judge them,
yeah.
but we would not judge them making the show. It would just sort of be like, what are, a lot of interesting scenarios to portray dramatically, and just putting those up and just not saying what is right or wrong, not leaning one way or the other, just making you, think about it.
Yeah.
Much like the game makes you think about whether you're going to let somebody through.
If you want to scan them and see their naked bodies,
Yeah.
that's what this show's going to be about for me.
Sexy.
I'm going to push for the naked bodies.
Just old.
Well, it's like she's going to be on Showtime or HBO, right? So we can just get to tits just all over the place.
Yeah.
Just like full on, just wang. Let's just get it all in there.
Yeah, there's a first shot.
Yeah, absolutely. Just the logo, Papers, Please, over a dick.
The dick flops out from behind it.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah. It's like covering, the logo's covering like the crotch, and then the dick just flops.
For some reason, the guy's holding it up, and then we cue him, and he drops his dick in the frame.
Yeah.
Dick and balls.
And
It's a CG dick.
Drop. Is it not prosthetic? We have the budget for that?
Well, it's a CG dick, and we do it at 3,000 frames per second slow motion, so it falls and breaks through the logo.
Oh, nice.
It breaks through the logo.
Yeah, it breaks the logo, and then it goes off to the sides. Papers, please.
No.
And that's the first line of the show, by the way.
No, they have to say it at least one.
And he's
one
like,
time per
where are
episode.
my papers? I'm fucking naked and my dick's
Yeah.
out.
Oh, they have to say it. They're contractually obligated to get it in once an episode.
Yeah.
Not the dick, Papers, Please. Or both. Who knows? This sounds like a really good idea.
Well, we did it, everyone.
Yeah. I mean, up until that last idea, I was like on the fence whether or not this was a good adaptation, but now I'm
The dick and balls just really pushed you into the yes camp.
completely over.
Slow motion CG dicks always makes everything better.
Yeah. I mean, look at Game of Thrones.
Do they have slow motion CG?
Prove me wrong right now. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, you can't.
Hold on, podcasters, while I...
Someone listening to this
Hang
podcast
on, let
will
us
know.
pause this recording.
There are for sure wangs in Game of Thrones. For sure.
just don't remember seeing it.
They're like they're way off on their ratio, don't get me wrong, but they're definitely in there.
Yeah, there should be more. I agree.
100%. Let's get some equality up here.
Why are we talking about wang so much? Why are we using the word wang?
I set a tone by saying it once and then we just kind of went with it.
12-year-olds.
This seems like a really good time to end the podcast.
Yeah, I think before this would have been good too.
I think really quick we should all just take our dicks out and then we'll sign off.
It's been out the whole time.
Okay.
That's the loudest fake dick noise. Well, thanks for joining us in this weird
Nice
podcast.
Yeah.
I think, the show definitely, jokes aside, I think the show has a lot of potential for really interesting character-based storytelling, and we could take it much darker or a little bit less. The gray area is definitely flexible for that kind of thing, and it seems to match a lot of the tone of shows that are out there right now, like The Wire. Well, The Wire's old, but like The Americans, like a lot of those shows that are sort of tense and they're thrillers in certain moments, and you don't know what where people's loyalties lie and that kind of thing. And I think that it would definitely fit in very well with the sort of current lineup of television as it stands.
Yeah, so like every show, let's end this with saying, all right, give us millions of dollars to make Papers, Please into a television show.
Who would direct it?
We would
Us.
direct it.
Oh, all three of us. Great.
Yeah.
Yeah, at the same time.
Perfect.
Direct episodes 1, 2, and 3.
We would just all each go talk to a character and an actor in the scene, and then they would get back and just...
We all had different
Yeah,
ideas
yeah,
on what this
we wouldn't have talked before that.
Yeah.
getting really bad flashbacks about making video games in general, because this is just what that is all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, no, we'll direct it, and it will be written by some schmuck.
It would be
Some
a cool...
ghostwriter, but it'll be us on the list of...
This would be a show that would be cool to like play with color palette.
Yeah.
I think a really cool.
I thought the whole thing was going to be black and white.
That's what I meant by color palette.
Shit. No color palette.
Yeah, grays, blues, reds.
Nothing screams prestige television like
Weird choices
Black
on
and
color.
black and white. Why don't we also make it experimental and just have shots?
We already
where,
did the
like,
inside
just,
show,
just half
so.
a face, and then most of the frame is empty on the other side
Just
of it.
really stark, weird, like noir lighting. Just really like harsh shadows, and
Yeah. Except for the red stuff, everything red is in color.
it's just Sin City.
And to really hammer
Shit.
down like how could be anybody, we'll just have the same actor play every part.
Oh man, like
Is his
Anomalisa.
name? Can his name just be like John Everyman?
Yeah. Yeah.
Hero protagonist.
God, that fucking name.
Anyway, thanks for listening.
Nah, we're not done.
Okay.
We're done. Bye.
Hold on. Look.
What?
All right, that's going to do it for this week's episode. If you have any feedback, you can follow us on Twitter at storiedcast, or you can email us any feedback or any ideas for future shows at storiedcast@gmail.com. Thanks for listening.
Storied is Chris Rebbert, Harrison Pink, and Sean Ainsworth, and our music is composed by the amazing Jared Emerson Johnson. Thanks so much for listening.